Welcome to episode 2 of the Radial Ventures podcast, where we talk about new trends in AI and how it affects the construction of new companies and commerce in general, and society at large, and culture, and the song Espresso by global pop sensation Sabrina Carpenter.
It is
Hey
everything.
guys,
Dan,
how's it
it's
going?
always about Sabrina Carpenter, isn't it, Dan?
Apparently. So yeah, I'm your host, Dan Miner. I run the media platform Series B, seriesbuffalo.com if you want to check it out. And I'm here with the leadership team at Radial Ventures, the Buffalo's first and only venture studio. I'm including its CEO, Dan Magnuszewski, CTO, Mike Canzoneri, and one of its esteemed vice presidents, Jonathan Gorczyca. So you guys want to get into it?
Do it. Make it happen.
All right. So last week we had some really illuminating discussions around OpenClaw, and that was last week though. Like things have already changed 1,000 times because that's what happens in AI. So Mike, why don't you tee us up for the updates in this rapidly changing, sort of fascinating AI paradigm?
Yeah. So like everything else right now, OpenClaw continues to move extremely fast. There's a couple of updates that have come out since last week, getting a lot of stability issues and security issues under control, which is awesome. We've had our hands on this thing, giving it more and more capabilities every single day, and seeing the team drop into Slack and start to use it for things and ask it questions and start to push it a little bit has been very, very interesting. Overall, like in the market and across tech, you're starting to see, or you're continuing to see even more pickup of OpenClaw and folks being willing to fire it up and give it a shot. Like everything that's new, definitely security issues out of the gate, definitely challenges getting this thing to not do the wrong thing if it's hooked into your own personal stuff. But if you have a reasonably secure approach to how you're doing things and permissions that you're giving it and access you're giving it, it can be a really, really effective tool. Claw Hub, where they have a lot of public posting of the skills for OpenClaw posted, was an absolute cesspool of malware and folks trying to scam, your OpenClaw install into giving all of the credentials up and sending all your money over and transferring your crypto wallets and everything else. And so they've got a bunch of scanning now in place. They're really starting to lock that down a little bit and make sure that there's at least the beginnings of some stability and sort of clearing the riffraff out so that real work can get done, which is also good to see. So yeah, continues to grow and get better. And it's been a couple of weeks and it's extraordinary.
I was listening to something where they were talking about this being an open source project and why did it take some dude in his apartment just whipping this thing together for us to kind of get what we really felt like series should have been. And like it's finally here. Here's the thing that we were promised. These are the jetpacks we were promised. And it's really a testament to open source versus a lot of these closed source and what a lot of these big companies are doing, because all these security implications, all of the madness that went along with it, no company, none of the big companies are going to release something that is that insecure, does have those vulnerabilities, can steal all your money. But it's if you look at the progress, it's been huge in a very short time because you are leveraging the power of everyone on the internet, developers from around the world, people all able to contribute. And that's an interesting kind of harken back to how most of the tools, maybe all the tools we really use today are all open source, and they grew at the rate they did because of the open source model. And there's kind of no rules, and it's a community led effort, and there's no company, there's no CEO, there's no board meetings or earnings calls to go report on. So it was an interesting take on that, and something that I think maybe viewing the open source models kind of conversation versus closed source models, I think it kind of opens up a debate around how fast could things really be going if some of these things do become open source.
And what's really awesome, and I say this a lot, when you have an ecosystem build up, and we use the LAMP stack as a great example of this. MySQL is an amazing database. At the time, PHP was a great language. Apache was a great web server. But until the tool chain really evolved around those things to start to make it a stack, that's where the power really came. And you see that over and over across tech in the history of what we've seen. This is no different. OpenClaw really is a tool chain wrapped around some extremely capable models. And in that, there is, to your point, Dan, it's almost like an unusual blending of the best of what those large companies have been able to produce in those models and having access to Opus 4.6, within a week of that coming out, or Gemini or whatever, or local, running your models locally, and Kimi 2.5 and everything else, along with an open source tool chain that's just moving fast and breaking everything while we figure out how to ride this thing without falling over. And it's really, really good stuff.
Yeah, you see people start to commercialize it as well, right? There was a Super Bowl ad that came out for AI.com, and I forgot the price tag on that, but it was ridiculous. And everybody suspects that it's just a wrapper for OpenClaw, right? So we're starting to bring this to market and use this open source technology to actually monetize and deliver more value to people. But you saw that attention on the world's biggest stage at the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Hey, before we move on, let's zoom out for a minute and maybe take that a little bit further. What is the high level impact that you think this is going to make? Is it limited to software development, or will it leak into the broader sort of socio-cultural society questions that
It's explicitly not limited or even beginning with software development. Like you generally don't use OpenClaw as much to do development. You'd probably use you'd probably use Claude Code directly, or in its new agent framework, which is awesome for building stuff. But really, this is a tool chain around enabling business operations and just normal things that people would do. The right way to think of it is it's a person.
It's a person that can do every role of everyone in the company at the same time.
That has access to all of the tooling, right, and all of your information. So we're even tinkering with ways that this can be applied to busy family life, right? So maybe not just in business, but, I'm sure you're dealing with all sorts of different calendars and events for your kids and what have you. And this thing can understand it and help you grok that in a way that maybe just a simple shared Google Calendar with your wife did in the past. But this is an evolution of that, and a huge step up.
Yeah, the right way to think of it's really this Jake Hill and This Week in Startup has been calling it the replicants. They're like people. And when you start to model that out across some of the things that you're reading as people sort of process what this means, like what does the world look like when you add 50 million robotic people to the economy? Because that's kind of what's happening right now.
Right. Anywhere you're calling, you're scheduling, you're messaging back and forth, any of that kind of logistical stuff, any kind of, we need to prep for, I think a lot of the executive assistant, or I forget all the other roles and stuff like that. But all of those are really what this comes after right out of the gate. It can replicate an employee who, as I said, can do every role and knows everything that happened and can navigate all of your systems. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and we're already increasing our investment, right? Like we spun up our first instance to help with radial operations. And this week we had 3 more Mac Minis delivered to the office, and we're spinning up new employees every day.
Well, somehow 50 million new robot people is not the most interesting thing that you guys read on the internet today. So let's transition.
My kind of hot take is that even with all this going on, I've kind of been maybe more intrigued or mind blown. There was The Neuron's a great newsletter podcast, and they had a woman, Eve Bodina, on, and really what it's around a way of building energy-based models. And she had a really interesting background coming from quantum physics and very heavy theoretical physics. And the interesting part of it is that the way that it solves and the way that it does. So really right now, LLMs are, people think of AI, they think of LLMs, right? That's all everyone's talking about. That is what we view as kind of this, like, we've achieved it. Now it's a matter of building out infrastructure, more machines, more power. We gotta go to space so we can get more power and run these things and run these data centers where, this company, Logical Intelligence, they came from the physics standpoint, right? And, if you're trying to create intelligence, what is the best way to do it? And their view is, well, you should understand physics and dark matter, kind of how the universe works, may have a good indication, maybe a good model for building intelligence on the machine learning side. And so there's been a lot of work done around it over the years, but what she's done is really applied it to building out these models. And what they found is it works really, really well, right? And so but there's very big differences. And so really the difference is with an LLM, the way LLMs work is you ask it a question, its response is really going through and doing localized guessing. So it's guessing what the first word is going to be. Okay, based on that, like what's the best probability of the second word? Okay, we're going to put that, right? So it kind of like builds this response. Obviously very compute intensive, but it's also prone to error, right? And that's why you get hallucinations. If you mess up the first step in that process, now everything else is off, right? And so this leads to hallucinations and all the other issues we have. Hallucinations are a big problem. The beauty of energy-based models is that there is no hallucination and it operates at, I think it was 5,000 times less parameters that you need to run it. And so the way energy-based models work is that it's really, if you think of a topological map with mountains and valleys, basically it's having all of the answers solved immediately. And then really what you're using is physics to find the lowest point. So if you have a ball and it's on the top of a mountain and it'll roll down into the lowest point, that's the answer, right? And so it can solve, we were talking, and maybe we can get like something up to show it's solving Sudoku problems in 300 milliseconds. And they have a whole test against all of these other LLMs, BIS46, 45, DeepSeek, whoever. And the way LLMs solve it is in such inefficient way, and they're generally wrong or they time out. And so the analogy is really, if you're solving a Sudoku problem, an LLM would be like you have a maze and you're walking through the maze, right? The way that energy-based models solve it is like having a maze and you're flying in a helicopter above it. That's the difference. So basically being able to leverage physics within these models, you can almost instantly get correct answers. And there is a thing such as drift. It's like perturbation theory where in quantum physics, where the model can detect that it's drifting off course. So if you think about it, the ball's rolling uphill and detect that and pull it back down without needing to be retrained or do any of the other stuff. So super interesting. And for me, really liking the neuroscience side of things. There was a great book back when Mike and I were in college called On Intelligence, which was the founder of the Palm Pilot trying to learn how the brain works in order to build an AI around that. So for me, this is super interesting because, the brain, from an energy efficiency, the brain is 20 watts of power. It can do super complex things, right? And so how can we really, to get to AGI, how we're going to need to figure out more how we can do this closer to the energy usage of a brain, as opposed to building out gigawatts of power and data centers and things like that. So for me, I kind of saw this, and it's like this using physics and the way the universe works to solve how intelligence works makes total sense. And just being able to use well-established mathematics to instantly solve problems and have none of the hallucination, to me is just a massive game changer on how we look at AI, how we look at the infrastructure side of things, but really kind of I just love that it's also a different way of thinking. It's not just joining the herd of LLMs and let's just keep building better LLMs. It's what are these different models and approaches that allow us to not just get incrementally better, but just have a whole new paradigm of building these models. It's super interesting. There is probably more of the end game is where, and there's a really great analogy on a hybrid model of LLMs are useful because they're interacting with humans. Humans require language to convey messages and interact. So really the energy-based models can act as the brain and do the calculations, paired with LLMs that do the talking in a human interface kind of way. So for me, this is, super interesting. You look at the coding aspect, they talked on, code generation. So right now using LLMs, it's non-deterministic. So you could get errors. You have to, have some hallucinations. With these models, they have what's in software called correct by construction. So there's basically ways that it can take code that's generated, move it to a mathematical model, and prove that it's mathematically correct. So this is something called formal verification. So if you think of building software, like you're not going to want an LLM to build your fighter jet software or to build your nuclear power plant software, you're going to want something that is 100% accurate, that you can mathematically prove that this code works. And you're not going to want to use an LLM that's, pretty good and you're getting it to 90% of the way there, right? So for me, like all of these different, we'll put a link to the interview and to their site in the notes, but huge game changer.
Now, Dan, imagine walk into the future with me, right? Imagine a world where there are 50 or 100 million instances of OpenClaw running businesses and executing. And right now they're on 1.0 of this model. It solves a Sudoku puzzle, right? Really, really fast in a way that's unsolvable by the other models. But in whatever it's going to be, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months even, doesn't matter, right? That new model comes out with a massive efficiency gain and a massive capability gain, and everyone just drops it into their OpenClaw. And the level up on that distribution mechanic is insane. And we don't even have robotics evenly distributed across the economy yet.
Yeah. Well, and that's with the Sudoku, where the LLMs couldn't, would time out, take 40 seconds and always be wrong or generally be wrong. The cost, so it cost $11,000. Like the LLM API bill to solve that is $11,000. The cost for the Kona model, which is an energy-based model, was $4. Right. So you now look at how much more efficient and cost effective these things are. It's like, what is that going to open up? It's crazy.
How close is this to being out of the theoretical world into something that's in widespread use?
So it's real. It's kind of nice because they are taking a bit of an AI safety approach. So their approach is they're working with companies who are trying to solve hard problems that need to always be accurate, can't have hallucinations. And they're working with those companies to go and stress test the model. And so it's live, it's out there in the sense that you can work with their company called Logical Intelligence and they'll work with you. But it's not open to the public at this point. And it's a much different model than ChatGPT, which is just saying, hey, we're going to open it up, just everybody go hog wild on it. They're taking a little bit more of a conservative approach. And she even talks about how it's super, everyone making stupid images and, asking it dumb questions or whatever we're doing is burning a ton. I mean, it's all just venture dollars being scorched on fire. So they're taking a much different approach from that, right? So more to a B2B to start and then figure out what their kind of open to the world strategy is. But it's still a very new company. And, it just it came out of the research that she was doing and they have it. It's working. And I think they have it in production, certain industries and stuff like that. But the Sudoku piece was really we proved we can actually take theoretical physics and apply it, these energy landscapes and apply it to a better AI model.
Likely won't be the only one, but the research is out there, the strategy is out there. And so in the same way that DeepSeek had its mixture of experts strategy and architecture for their model, which changed the game in a lot of ways, these companies are all watching each other, right? The folks working on these things are working in an environment that has seen one of the closest connections between research, science, and application in the real world since the Manhattan Project, right? And the efforts that went on around nuclear energy in that time. And so they're all watching too. And it wouldn't be surprising at all if OpenAI or Google started rolling out some of these strategies and what they're making available to people.
Well, and the interesting thing, Yann LeCun, who was the head of AI from Meta, is on their board. And this is aligned with, a lot of the reason he left is because he believed it's not all LLMs. LLMs are not going to get us to AGI. And so this is part of that, part of that other anti-LLM, or at least strict LLM approach.
All right. Well, we talked about lobsters. We talked about physics. Now let's talk about trust. Jonathan, what are you thinking about today in terms of the sort of broader societal effect of AI and what it means to how people interact online?
Yeah, it feels like we're past the information age and into the age of misinformation, where anybody can generate something that can trick our eyeballs or our ears. You can get a phone call that sounds just like your mother asking for money. You see images online that you can't detect that are real or not. And I think what we're seeing is that individuals are starting at distrust and not believing what they see, and then asking, is this real? And there's a massive benefit to that. 5 years ago, you might see something and immediately believe it, whether it's something your crazy uncle posted on Facebook or something that you were browsing on a photo feed. But now you look at these things and you actually don't know what's real. Whether it's things going on politically, and you're seeing images of protests and what's happening. You have to start from that base and say, what should I believe? And I think this actually has a really positive effect on us. As this continues to roll out, people will start with the questioning, is this real? I need to go verify this and make up my own mind on it. So when we start there, we get to a better endpoint because people are using critical thinking to get to the end, right? They're not just blindly believing what they see or what they hear. I think there's a ton of second order consequences, and there'll be a lot of people who are targeted with this technology until they start to understand that they must ask the question first. Is this real or is this synthetic?
I just want to point out that everything on seriesbuffalo.com is real for anybody that wants to drop in the bucket in terms of the overall. So I don't know. What are the broader societal effects of that? Like, let's zoom out of that again. Is that about social media habits, or is that about old people getting scammed, or is this about the marketing and media kind of like paradigm in society right now? Like, Jonathan, what do you think?
Well, you can kind of look at what's happened with like phishing techniques and look back at history, right? So when my 75-year-old parents first came online, they would easily be tricked by an email that looked like their bank and asked them for significant credentials, right? And now they have start to understood that they shouldn't click that link, right? Their UPS package that they got a text from, you shouldn't have clicked that link. So they've learned, and we're going to see the same thing happen here, right? My parents, even folks our age who aren't familiar with the technology, they're gonna slowly understand that it may not be real, it may be nefarious, and it may be manipulating us. So I think there's still that curve that we're at the beginning of the curve where people are beginning to wake up and understand the effects of so much synthetic media and the ability to generate an image that looks like all of us, or even a video, a voice, whatever it might be, right? These things, they'll be used for good, they'll be used for bad, and humans just have to learn and become aware over time.
I'm kind of hoping people get fed up and live less of their lives in the internet and more of their lives in real life, as it becomes a untrusted playground. And I think there was some other comments on how with Clawbot and all these other things too, now you have agents going wild, and how their ability to saturate different communication mechanisms from text, voice, email, social, like whatever, it's going to get really wild. And there is potential that, all of these pipes are just going to be clogged up with junk, and we're just going to need to like reboot or
Elsewhere.
Let's go back to the 80s kind of deal.
And that's that's my hope, right? That's where my optimism comes from. Is like the shit will flow into these things. If there's hundreds of thousands of these bots posting on Twitter and Facebook and making these images, we're going to say, no, I don't want to be in that space. I'm going to go out into the woods with my friends and talk face to face with folks and completely disconnect. So humans' ability to change and adapt to the technology and then say, we want this instead, is where ultimately I get all of my optimism from with all of this. Like, we will change as humans and we will do the things that bring us value. Certainly after we see, the shitstorm come through. Many of you have already done this probably, right? Turns into a trash pile. You don't go there anymore, right? And to Dan's point, like, I think we're all hopeful that we push towards valuing real world in-person experiences more than we do these little social feeds and bubbles that have ultimately stifled us.
It's also interesting because all of us have children, and they've grown up with these warnings about the pernicious nature of social media. And it's like the new smoking, right? Like, that's all you heard when we were in high school was smoking is just going to, it's like the dominant message of don't do that. And now our kids who do listen to us mostly are hearing about the value of human interactions outside of just their digital bubbles. So
And they have
things are going to be different when they're entering
They
the
have
workforce.
assemblies telling them the dangers of social media, where back then ours was smoking and sex. So, we've come a long way.
Now that's cool again. And social media is
Smoke-free class of 2000.
right.
over
Like
here.
you see these younger generations. There's a lot of research around these generations are back to flip phones, right? Because they see their parents on it, and when the view of your father or your mother is them hunched over a glowing rectangle scrolling all day, they don't feel good. They don't want that, and so they don't turn into that. They push away from it. And I think this is very, very good, right? Similar to social media, we saw what we've done over the past 2 decades, and we say no. We don't want that. No more. This isn't for us. This doesn't make us feel good.
So we took one for the team, Jonathan?
I think so, right? Like these things ebb and flow, right? We have to create something. We have to be on the fringe and create it and see what happens. And then it has to become saturated, and we have to react emotionally to these things. Is it good for us? Is it bad for us? I think the individual responsibilities that emerge are like, now we have to decide to get away from it. This little dopamine machine that makes me feel good because I'm seeing 3-second clips and I can get to the thing that reinforces my beliefs or makes me feel good for a moment is the equivalent of like eating a piece of candy, right? You feel good for a moment, then you have that crash, you feel like shit, right? And the same thing is kind of happening here, right? We're right, and we will change to move towards the things that make us feel good, and we will shape the world, right? Humans will mold this big mushy ball of clay into the thing we want it, even if we have to go through things that might have been a misstep or make us feel bad.
We just need to defeat the past 15 years of the brightest PhD behavioral experts who have worked at these massive companies, tricking our monkey brains, basically.
And the battle starts in Buffalo.
That's right. Here we go.
Well, that's the episode title.
Dan Miner, what topic do you have for today's podcast? What do you want to talk about?
Oh boy, you put me on the spot here. My wife, my poor
Yep.
wife has to deal with me ruminating about like really arcane grammatical questions. So we went out to dinner last night because we can't go out on Valentine's Day. We went out to North Tonawanda, and I spent like 5 minutes talking about creme brulee and whether it's like a noun phrase or whether brulee is an adjective.
And what do you think?
I think
Don't leave us hanging, man.
I think it is. Yeah, that's my hot take. I
And
think
based on that question, she's still going to remain married to you as well, right? That's with that dinner conversation.
These are discussions you're supposed to have
she
before
might
you
have
get
ordered
married.
another
Dan.
drink at that point. So yeah, ending it on a high note there.
Yeah.
So
Were you
yeah.
at Prescott or where?
No, we went to the Webster Bistro. It was good. Creme brulee was top notch. We're good. Yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, that's episode 2 of the latest and hottest podcast, not just in Buffalo, but at the cutting and bleeding edge of technology and culture and
Everywhere.
grammar.
Yeah.
So
It's on the internet. So it's everywhere.
it's on the internet. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.